Hey guys, no video for our healthcare in Japan playlist. Bit of a different scene for you to look at. We know there's some people that are stuck in small rooms at the moment, need a change of scenery. Hopefully that gives you something else to look at for a couple of minutes. One of our patrons on Patreon sent us a link to a video from the US that showed some police officers arresting someone for going into their shop. And apparently in that area there was penalties for going outside your house. And this guy had gone to his shop for some reason, the shop that he owned, and he got arrested and he got a penalty of $1,000. And our patron sent the video to us and said, what are the penalties like in Japan at the moment? And to answer his question, to be honest, we haven't heard any talk of penalties at all, or of any specific laws at all. The way it seems to have worked here has been all requests. So the Prime Minister had made requests to the prefectures to do things, and the prefectures then made requests to the cities to do things, and then the cities made requests to the people to do things, and that seems to be pretty much it. So for example, the Prime Minister requested that the prefectures, so the prefectures are sort of like the states, so the individual states, the individual prefectures, the Prime Minister requested that the individual prefectures close the schools until a certain date, and they did. And then he requested that they extend that date until the 6th of May, 7th of May, and so they did. And then now he's requested, actually no, he hasn't, he didn't. In this prefecture, in Aichi Prefecture, the prefecture decided to extend the closure until the 31st of May. And they request that the schools, they request to the schools that the schools stay closed till the 31st of May. So it's all done by request. It's all done by request. And just because of the way Japan works, that's usually enough, you know. The Prime Minister requested that people avoid going outside unless they have to. That's sort of enough, you know. They haven't demanded, as far as businesses closing or anything like that, they haven't demanded by law that any close. There's been some they've made direct requests to. The Prime Minister requested recently, some of you might have seen a video he made recently about the pachinko, about the gambling houses, and the Prime Minister requested that they close because they hadn't. They'd been asked to and they hadn't. And then the Osaka Prefecture had requested that the pachinkos closed, and some of them hadn't, and a few of them hadn't, 3 or 4 of them hadn't. So the prefectural governor stood up in front of the media and held up a written list of the pachinko parlors that hadn't closed yet. And we sort of laughed because we thought it was like free advertising, you know. We pictured, because some of the people here are ignoring the requests, of course, and we showed you people in the pachinko still gambling this week, in the last week. So we thought it was sort of funny when the prefectural governor of Osaka, these are the pachinko that are still open, and we laughed because we imagined all the hardcore gamblers all running to those pachinko parlors. Oh, there's 3 still open, yay! And then shortly after they closed. So it's sort of the social pressures, and those of you who have watched our videos for a few years, over the years on our how-to playlists and things like that, we've referred to this before, the social pressures to conform and the social pressures to do what you're supposed to be doing. And that's what we're hearing from family and friends. You know, recently I tried to convince some family members to go to a restaurant for dinner because all the restaurants are still open. Most of the restaurants are still open. Those businesses that have closed are usually closing because they don't have enough customers, because the government has requested that people stay home. So the federal government and the state governments and the local governments have requested that people not go out unless it's necessary. So going to work is considered necessary, and going shopping, supermarkets considered necessary, and things like that. As a result of that, some of the businesses, their sales are down considerably, so some of them have closed. So the ones that we see that have closed, usually it's because they haven't got enough customers. It's not because they've been told to close. And interestingly, some people we know one guy that operates a noodle shop, and his sales are up because he does takeaways, and so his takeaway sales are up, so his overall monthly sales are up, so he's making more money, he's more busy. There's been a couple of examples like that we know of where people have actually been more busy because of it. We know someone who works in one of the Shimamura, one of the clothes shops, and she said that the number of customers is down, but the sales aren't down terribly much. So it seems that people that are going there have more time to buy or something, are buying more stuff. So to answer that person's question, it's just different, you know. We haven't been told. We showed you recently that the local city had closed a car park to a beach to try and stop people from going to the beach. And again, they'll make requests for people not to go to the beach. Recently in the cherry blossom season, they made requests that people not do the hanami, which is where people usually go and sit on blankets under the trees and enjoy the flowers. And they requested that people not do that. Because it does tend to get a bit congested in the parks. People do tend to sit a bit close together in the parks. So they requested that people not do that, and most people didn't do that. So it's just the way the Japanese society works. You know, we sort of mentioned this on a previous video. It's sort of almost like it's the way this society works. It functions quite well in scenarios like this, when there's something unexpected happening, some sort of emergency happening, sudden changes in what we have to do and what we should do and what we shouldn't do. And Japanese people tend to adapt to it pretty well. But they do feel the pressure. That's what I was going to mention before about the restaurant. Recently tried to encourage some family members to go to a restaurant for dinner, and they wouldn't be in it. No, we've been told we shouldn't go out unless it's necessary. So that social pressure to do what we've been asked to do was enough to stop them going to the restaurant. So, but people still are. Most of the restaurants are still open. You'll see less cars in their car parks, but most of them are still open. Most of them are flying takeout nobori. Nobori's those long, narrow flags that they have outside restaurants here, and most of them are flying takeout nobori that say take out. So whoever makes those flags must be making some money too. So a lot of the restaurants that always did takeout are really pushing the takeout thing more. Those who didn't do takeout before have started to do it, and then some are doing the home delivery thing that we showed you recently. The McDonald's doing home delivery, so some of them pushing that as well. So again, all of that's sort of voluntary, though. You know, we haven't heard about. There could well be laws. But we just haven't heard about them, or penalties. There could be laws and penalties that we haven't heard about, but we just haven't heard about them. There's no talk of that. You know, the Osaka prefecture thing with the pachinko, they were shaming them into closing. They were saying, look, we've requested that the pachinko close, and these are the 3 that haven't closed. And they were shaming them. They weren't sending inspectors around to write tickets or write penalties or something. They were just publicly shaming them. That, you know, in the interests of public health, we've asked the pachinko to close, and these 3 businesses have not closed. And it was a really big deal. They actually had to enact a law to allow them to name these pachinko that were still open, which is sort of... Recently there was an article in one of the Japanese newspapers talking about how after World War II that Japan was much more careful about military type, dictatorship type, you know, ruling the people, that they're very careful now about forcing people to do anything, that they've gone the other way now, that they want to be really careful about, you know, being respectful to the citizens and asking the citizens to do things. And it's sort of a bit like that. You know, they don't want to be demanding and making laws and penalties and things. So they actually had to be able to be able to name those 3 businesses that hadn't closed. They had to actually enact some law to allow them to publicly name those businesses, which is interesting, isn't it? So the Japanese laws must protect the privacy of those businesses and not allow them to publicly name them, which is sort of interesting, because saying a business being open or being closed is not a secret, is it? To publicly say this business is open, you know, for me to stand here and say Denny's is open, and you know, Sukiya is open, and you know, the Basia is open, and to name the businesses that are open, you wouldn't think that would be a problem, but because they were publicly sort of shaming them, they had to be careful apparently, so they had to bring in some law to allow them to do it. So the point of it is, back to the original question, you know, laws and penalties. Well, the point of this is that we haven't heard of any laws and penalties at all yet. There was the state of emergency declared by the Prime Minister that's supposed to run until the 6th of May, and there's talk of him extending that. The prefectures that weren't, some of the prefectures that weren't included in the original list of prefectures that were put under the state of emergency, including Aichi, this prefecture, requested that they be included in the state of emergency, and it seems that that's just so they get the benefits, they get federal government payments and things like that. But there was no laws that came with it where they suddenly said you can't do this or you can't do that. Just the request to close the schools, and then other things as well, other public facilities like the dojo. Sadly, we haven't been able to practice martial arts in the dojo for the last, how long's that been? 2 months or something, and it'll be another month probably, because those guys are copying the schools. So while the schools are closed, the dojo are closed, which is pretty sad. We sort of missed that, but again, it makes sense, doesn't it? You know, so they've you know, the states requested that the cities close their city buildings, like their dojo and things like that. The library's still open. But that's been pretty much it. I mean, for most people, most of their daily lives haven't changed terribly much, really, you know, except just stopping themselves going to some of these things by choice, you know, choosing not to go to the restaurant and things like that seems to be the way it is. It's all done by request and by social pressure, really, which is pretty extreme. Those of you who live in Japan or have lived in Japan know all about the social pressure thing. Lots of the videos we've made on the how-to playlist have been addressing that topic. You know, it's not to be understated how strong the social pressures are in Japan, but it's not being stopped. Like the video we saw, the police were sent to this place. Some anonymous caller reported the person for being at his business place, and the police went there and arrested him, and he is fined $1,000 apparently. So there's none of that going on. It's social pressure. And some people are ignoring it, of course. We do see people here doing the stuff they're not supposed to be doing. There were the people in the pachinko, and you know, they closed the beach, but there were people at the beach, and you know, that's going to happen. But they do seem, having said that too, if you've been following the statistics about Japan, they're doing pretty well. I mean, we were number 2 in the most, you know, the biggest problem countries at the beginning. You know, China was number 1, Japan was number 2, and we're way down the list now. And they do seem to be doing rather well at containing it. So, I mean, of course, it's still growing, it's still spreading, and it still will. But overall, if you look at it as a percentage of the population, they seem to be doing pretty well with it. So it does seem to be working. So, but having said that, we've still got another month, all of May. Now the schools are closed. They're actually talking now about not having a summer holiday, cancelling the school summer holidays, which all the parents totally agree with. But it makes sense, because the kids by the end of May, if they go back to school at the beginning of June, they'll have had 3 months with no school. So, you know, to go back and then a little bit later to have summer holidays is a bit silly. So to cancel the summer holidays is probably a very good idea. Very fast motorbike through the rice fields there. So hopefully someone's enjoyed that sunset over there. Pretty much covered the topic, sadly. But what we might do, might leave you with that in peace to listen to the birds and watch the sunset for the next couple of minutes till it disappears. Our gift to you. Anyway, there it was. More videos coming soon.